If you travel north from Romsey in Hampshire on the cross-country road towards the sprawling army camp at Tidworth, you pass through some of the most bountiful farming land in the county. The diamond-clear waters of the River Test wind their way close over to the east. Tucked away in a little valley lie the three charming thatched villages of Over, Middle and Nether Wallop. The place is calm and beautiful in its own right. But it also claims fame from the fact that Lady Godiva lived in Over Wallop, and that W.G. Grace insisted that the only willows sturdy enough for his cricket bats grew in Nether Wallop. Gentle, shining streams run through the villages and make up the Wallop Brook, which, before long, runs into the great River Test itself. William Cobbett came here on one of his rural rides and found that it was, for the greater part, an open corn and sheep country, a considerable portion of the lands being downs. The wheat and rye and vetch fields look beautiful here, and during the whole of the way, the turnips of both kinds are not bad, and the stubble turnips very promising. The downs are as green as meadows usually are, and the grass is most abundant in all situations where grass grows. Jeff and Mavis Shadwell from Church Farm Over Wallop still do much of their farming in the good old-fashioned way, with binders, stooks, stacks and threshing machines.
We've had roots here for 3 generations. We are following in the footsteps of our forebears. Not that if everyone did that, possibly the world or the British Isles wouldn't progress as well as they have done up to now, but I still think it's nice to retain some of the older methods used in farming, and are quite viable even today. We do it in the old way, haymaking perhaps not as much as harvesting straw. And the straw harvest means a lot to us. Being on a limited acreage, we have to make the most of the land we farm. And it also helps to keep thatchers in work, and of course helps to dress many of the thatch cottages from seas in our parish.
My parents had a farm, and I was always out on the farm. Until I got married, I never done any housework or anything at all. I get up a bit earlier in the mornings and go to bed a bit later at night so that I can fix it all in. I'd rather be out in the fields, quite honestly, and helping than I would, indoors with the housework.
The byproduct of this patient work is that the Shadwells produce the kind of long, unbroken wheat straw, which allows them to weave and plait beautiful corn dollies, whose origins go back into the mists of time.
I hope this weather will soon relent so that we can finish the cheese later on in the week.
The sun might come out. I think it'll clear up, it should do.
About 30 years ago, we started making them as an added decoration for the church harvest festival. Well, I haven't seen any watermark in this straw this year. They were first used, of course, as they were corn idles. They were not dollies. One just adapted that word out of the word idle, and they were idles which were hung in various farmsteads. They were gathered, supposedly, the last few straws of the harvest. They were hung and kept in the dry, in the farmhouse, and then taken out to the field in the springtime to be scattered about.
Well, this straw is certainly better, isn't it, for working with, isn't it, this year, because it's such a lovely colour. More than so than it was
Oh, yeah.
last year. It's kept its colour.
Colour's good. The smaller ones, the Cambridgeshire bowls and everything which contains grain, they were, of course, made in that fashion so that the spirit of the corn remained inside, protected from anything outside, and protected in a way that they retained their fertility.
There is still some wood left in Hampshire, though not as much as there ought to be. At Potters of Houghton, Rodney Malcolmer and his team still build the kind of mighty wheels which carried the guns at Waterloo. Wheelwrights are a dying breed, but the skills of those who remain are as sharp and impressive as ever they were.
At the last count about a couple of years ago, there were only, that we knew of, 8 that actually did it as a complete profession. There are people who do it part-time, but there are only 8 that we know of in the country, and 3 of those are in Northern Ireland. There certainly isn't enough wheelwrighting these days to keep a lot of wheelwrights going, for the simple reason that the wheels are very expensive because of the skill that is involved in them. Plus the fact that whilst many years ago there used to be quite a lot of pony and traps, now it's just a hobby as opposed to having to use them as a profession. Basically, it's the 3 English timbers of ash, oak and elm. The centre of the wheel, which is the stock, is usually of elm. The spokes are usually ash or oak, and the felloes are ash or oak. I picked my trade up from the local wheelwright who used to be here, who has long since passed away, and I'm training, or have been training, the other lads to take it on from me. It is something that you've got to learn by experience, and it takes more than 5 years. I usually say that making a wheel is quite simple, but it's learning how to make the first one. It's the difficult bit.
Thomas Joyce is the birdman of Broughton. He has collected, bred and cared for birds for most of his life. They live in a luxury home in his garden, and in spite of the feelings of local farmers about those plunderers of their crops, he even has a pet wood pigeon. Tom, you must be the only person in this part of the world who actually looks after wood pigeons.
Well, I haven't heard of anybody else having one. This one actually fell out of the nest and just fell on the ground, only had just, well, very few feathers on about 4 years ago.
4 years ago?
Yeah, and I picked it up, put it in my pocket. It was in my pocket all day, walking about with it, and I brought it home, give it some bread and milk and a bit of mill, and he lived from there.
And it's pretty well fingered now.
Musty. Old Hampshire name for something. But he's all right now.
How'd you come by all the birds?
Well, it started off at one little one that my daughter was bought in, a canary in a cage. And I didn't like to see it in the cage, you know, it was so small. So we decided to buy another one, the mate for it, and nature takes its course. And then we've ended up with all this lot now.
Where'd the quail come from?
Well, that started off as the boy brought some eggs down, and we hatched those out. And it started from there, and then these lay, and then he has the eggs back. I can't be bothered hatching anymore. There's too many there now anyway. The children around here, especially the girls, you know, soft some of them are, they bring them here with broken wings. Some of them you can do all right. Just recently, I've let about 12 wild birds go, you know, with broken legs, and they come back, some of them, in the morning to have a feed.
The postman at Broughton, which is the village just below the Wallops, is Peter Webster. His is possibly the best known face in the village. But he's less easily recognisable when he dons protective gear for his great passion and pastime, beekeeping.
I came here from Lancashire, first came down when I was doing national service, and I stayed.
Must be something special about it then.
Well, I think there is. I think only got to look around us to see that. Very special, yeah. Very naturally beautiful place.
And what's it like for a beekeeper?
Gives moderate crops. Early spring we get lots of pollen, especially from the willows. Get a little bit of nectar. The beekeeper of 50 years ago just couldn't have imagined it, because we're taking honey off in June now, whereas the old beekeeper, he would have waited till August before he had a crop to take off. This is the last inspection now, so the English winter may well last till next May. So we've got to be sure that they have enough stores to get through. And preparation now is where next year's perhaps potential big honey crops are. The whole art really of beekeeping is preventing your bees from swarming or running to seed. If you can prevent them swarming, well then you get a honey crop, or at least they hold their own. We can't supply enough. We haven't got enough hives to keep up with the demand.
One of Peter Webster's friends is local gravedigger Cyril Barker. When they need cheering up, they sometimes get together in Peter's tiny kitchen, and with Peter's honey and Cyril's expertise, they make memorable amounts of ancient and heady mead.
I usually do it evenings, dark evenings, when otherwise you start brewing up and boiling up with the sun up, the bees soon find where you are, you know. One of the oldest forms of winemaking there is. I don't know, they tell us when it first started, somebody left a few combs or comb out, and the rain got on it, it started to ferment. That was the beginning of mead. We won't waste it, we'll stick it all into the mead. We certainly put in all sorts of things. Of course, the straight mead is made with just 3 or 4 jars of honey with a bit of lemon to get the fermentation going. In goes the lemon for acid.
Some more?
Not for a minute. I like to put in about ½ ounce of hops, dried hops. It's not a great lot of hops, but it just gives it a little different, especially with heather honey, because it's a very strong one, and it sort of tones it down a bit. You can add almost any of the herbs, you know. It's just a question of choice. But that helps the formation as well. Few currants.
What about the ginger?
Oh, we mustn't forget the ginger. That's most important, because that really gives it a kick. There we go.
Water?
Right, now we want the water. Gallon of water, right?
There is a treasure trove of old machinery and tools at the forge, which Roy Blake runs at Broughton. Much of it has been there for over a century. One of the lines which they specialise in there is making huge cylindrical kilns for charcoal makers. The steel has to be strong and to fit perfectly together.
Yes, it's been in the family now approximately 100 years. It's originally the blacksmith business was my great uncle's. After his death, my father bought the business, or took over the business, and then my brother carried on. Fred came to us during the war, end of the war, as a school leaver. He had to leave to do his national service, and then he came back again. Andrew is the son of my brother's original employee, and my brother's wife, was his sister-in-law, was very keen that he should come and continue with the work. The design of these films was brought over from Europe during the war. We recently went on the site of one of our local customers, and there would be 6 or 7 films all in general use there.
Robert Howlett wrote in 1706, "But for a whole county, Hampshire bears the bellaway for its many great and small, swift, shallow, clear, lovely and pleasant rivers and brooks, abounding in admirable trouts." This is a philosophy with which fishermen Jim Hadrell and Richard Banbury would agree, as Jim fishes the Wallop Brook and Richard ties flies on the water's edge. It is indeed a perfect way to spend a September afternoon.
This is really the cream of chalk stream fishing. The hills around here are full of chalk, which soaks up the rain rather like a sponge, and as it gets higher up the sponge, the brooks break out further up the valley, and hence you get places called winter-born lists because they only run in the winter. Fishing really is a state of mind. They say for every day you spend fishing, you get another day added on to your natural span. But you can overdo it. There was a man who fished all his life. When he woke up in the next world, he found he was by this idyllic stream. He was given a rod. He cast. First time he had a big fish. And he did this 2 or 3 times, and he said to the chap that was with him, well, come on, let's move upstream. And the fellow said, sorry, so long as there's a fish there, you have to catch it. Oh, hell, he says. That's right, sir, you've arrived.
It would be wrong to say that the Wallops have not changed, and perhaps for the worse, in the second half of the 20th century. The character of these lovely villages, like so many others, has been drastically altered as fads and fashions have changed, and rich outsiders have arrived and forced out the local inhabitants, who can no longer afford to live in their ancestral cottages. With burglar alarms on the outside and limousines in the garages, what were once humble homes have become fashionable weekend pads. Who can tell what view the old timbers take of the new occupants, or how disadvantageously they compare them with the simple souls who once lived within their protecting walls?